Jiwoo pressed her gloved hand against the cool glass of the observation window. Outside, the forest planet Viridian 7 stretched endlessly in shades of deep green and purple. The trees were unlike anything on Earth. They twisted upward like giant corkscrews, their leaves shimmering with bioluminescent patterns even in daylight. She had been a xenobiologist for 7 years now, traveling from planet to planet aboard the research vessel Hanul. The name meant sky in Korean, and it felt appropriate for a ship that carried humanity's dreams among the stars. But today felt different. Today, her instruments had picked up something unusual. "Are you sure about these readings?" Captain Hyun-sik asked from behind her. His voice carried the weight of responsibility. Every decision he made affected the 32 crew members under his command. Jiwoo turned to face him. "Yes, Captain. The bioscanner detected 4 life forms. They're small, and their heat signatures suggest they're juveniles. But the genetic markers—" She paused, checking her datapad again. "They match the Velkari species." The captain's face went pale. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the Velkari. They were apex predators, standing nearly 3 meters tall when fully grown. Their claws could tear through starship hull plating. Their strength was legendary. Entire colonies had been wiped out when Velkari hunting parties passed through their territories. "Velkari don't leave their young behind," Hyun-sik said slowly. "Something must have happened." Jiwoo nodded. She had been thinking the same thing. The Velkari were fiercely protective parents. For cubs to be alone on this planet meant something had gone terribly wrong. An accident, perhaps. Or an attack from another species. "I need to go down there," Jiwoo said. "If those cubs are injured or sick, they won't survive long on their own." "Absolutely not," the captain replied immediately. "Velkari cubs are still dangerous. Their instincts are just as deadly as the adults." "They're children," Jiwoo argued. "And they're alone. What kind of people would we be if we just left them to die?" Hyun-sik rubbed his temples. This was exactly the kind of situation he hated. Protocol said to avoid the Velkari at all costs. But protocol didn't account for abandoned children, no matter what species they belonged to. "1 hour," he finally said. "You take Corporal Minho with you, armed escort, and if anything goes wrong, you evacuate immediately. Understood?" Jiwoo smiled. "Understood, Captain." 20 minutes later, Jiwoo and Minho stood in the shuttle bay, checking their equipment. The corporal was a quiet man, but his hands moved with practiced efficiency as he loaded his pulse rifle. He had served in the Stellar Defense Force for a decade before joining the Hanul's crew. "You really think we can help them?" Minho asked as they boarded the shuttle. "I have to try," Jiwoo replied. The descent through Viridian 7's atmosphere was smooth. The shuttle's engines hummed softly as they broke through the cloud layer. Below them, the forest spread out like a living carpet. Jiwoo's scanner guided them to a clearing about 2 kilometers from where the ship orbited. When they landed, the first thing Jiwoo noticed was the silence. No birds sang. No insects buzzed. The forest felt like it was holding its breath. Minho stepped out first, rifle ready. He scanned the perimeter while Jiwoo grabbed her medical kit and portable scanner. The ground was soft beneath their boots, covered in moss that glowed faintly in the shadows. "This way," Jiwoo said, following the signal on her device. They walked for 10 minutes through the twisted trees. The bioluminescent patterns on the leaves created dancing shadows all around them. Jiwoo's heart pounded in her chest. She didn't know what they would find. Then she heard it, a soft whimpering sound like a puppy crying. "There," she whispered, pointing ahead. In a hollow beneath a fallen log, 4 small shapes huddled together. The cubs were about the size of large dogs, covered in silver-blue fur that seemed to ripple with each breath. Their faces were a mix of feline and something more alien, with large eyes that reflected the forest's glow. Even as babies, their claws were visible, sharp and curved. One of the cubs noticed them and hissed. The sound was weak, lacking the force of a healthy predator. "They're dehydrated," Jiwoo said, kneeling slowly, "and probably starving." "Be careful," Minho warned, keeping his rifle trained on the cubs. Jiwoo opened her medical kit and pulled out a hydration pack. She squeezed some of the liquid onto her glove and held it out. The cubs shrank back, terrified. "It's okay," Jiwoo said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you." She waited, hand extended. Minutes passed. Then, slowly, the bravest cub crept forward. Its tiny nose twitched as it sniffed her glove. Finally, a small pink tongue lapped at the liquid. The other 3 cubs watched. When nothing bad happened to their sibling, they came forward too. Soon all 4 were drinking from Jiwoo's hand, making small chirping sounds. "We need to take them back to the ship," Jiwoo said. "The captain will never allow it," Minho replied. "Then I won't ask permission," Jiwoo said firmly. She carefully placed the cubs in a portable containment pod, making sure they had enough air circulation. The cubs protested at first, crying out, but they were too weak to fight. As Jiwoo carried the pod back to the shuttle, she felt their eyes on her through the transparent walls. "You're making a mistake," Minho said as they lifted off. "Maybe," Jiwoo admitted, "but it's the right mistake." When they docked with the Hanul, Jiwoo didn't go to the bridge to report. Instead, she took the cubs directly to her lab. She set up a containment area with soft bedding and proper temperature controls. The cubs tumbled out of the pod, weak but curious about their new surroundings. Jiwoo ran her scanner over each one, checking their vitals. They were all female, she discovered. Sisters, probably from the same litter, and they were in bad shape. Malnourished, dehydrated, and showing signs of stress-induced illness. She prepared a nutrient solution based on what she knew about Velkari biology. It wasn't much. The species was so secretive that detailed information was scarce. But she had to try something. The cubs drank the solution, but they didn't seem satisfied. They cried and paced in their containment area, making sounds that broke Jiwoo's heart. "What do you need?" she whispered to them. One of the cubs pressed against the transparent wall, staring at Jiwoo with huge, pleading eyes. Jiwoo made a decision that would change everything. She opened the containment field and stepped inside. The cubs immediately rushed to her, but not to attack. They pressed against her legs, rubbing their heads against her. The purring sound they made was surprisingly loud for such small creatures. Jiwoo knelt down, and the cubs climbed into her lap. They were warm and soft, despite their fearsome reputation. Their purring intensified as she gently stroked their fur. "I'll protect you," Jiwoo promised. "I don't know how, but I will." Outside her lab, the ship's alarms began to sound. Someone had discovered what she had done. But in that moment, with 4 innocent lives depending on her, Jiwoo didn't care about the consequences. The galaxy might fear the Velkari, but these were just babies who needed help. And Jiwoo had never been good at turning away from someone in need. The door to Jiwoo's lab slid open with a hiss. Captain Hyun-sik stood in the doorway, his face red with anger. Behind him, 3 security officers waited with their hands on their weapons. "Explain yourself," the captain said, his voice dangerously quiet. Jiwoo stood up slowly, keeping herself between the captain and the cubs. The 4 small Velkari huddled behind her legs, making frightened chirping sounds. "They would have died down there," Jiwoo said. "I couldn't leave them." "You violated direct orders," Hyun-sik replied. "You brought hostile aliens onto my ship without authorization. Do you understand how serious this is?" "They're not hostile," Jiwoo argued. "They're babies. Look at them." The captain looked past her at the cubs. Even he had to admit they didn't look very threatening at the moment. They were trembling, pressing against Ji-woo like she was the only safe thing in the universe. "That doesn't matter," Hyun-sik said, though his voice had lost some of its edge. "When their parents come looking for them, this ship becomes a target. The Valkyrie don't negotiate. They don't show mercy. They will tear us apart to get their young back. Then we'll return them when they're healthy," Ji-woo said. "But right now, they need medical care. Give me 3 days. That's all I'm asking." The captain was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he sighed. 3 days. But they stay in containment, and you don't interact with them directly. That's an order, Ji-woo. "Yes, Captain," she lied. As soon as Hyun-sik left, Ji-woo sealed the lab door and returned to the cubs. She knew she should follow orders, but the moment she tried to put them back in the containment field, they cried so pitifully that her heart couldn't take it. "Just a little longer," she told them. "Then you'll have to go in." But a little longer turned into hours. The cubs refused to leave her side. When she tried to work at her desk, they climbed onto her lap. When she walked around the lab, they followed her like ducklings. And when she finally sat down in her chair, exhausted from the day's events, all 4 of them piled onto her. It was uncomfortable at first. They were heavier than they looked, and their claws, even retracted, pressed into her legs. But their warmth was soothing, and the sound of their purring filled the lab like a gentle engine. Ji-woo found herself stroking their fur without thinking. It was softer than she had imagined, almost like silk. The cubs made happy little sounds and burrowed deeper against her. "What am I going to do with you?" she whispered. Over the next 2 days, Ji-woo tried everything to get the cubs to eat properly. She synthesized different nutrient formulas based on known Valkyrie dietary requirements. She tried various temperatures and consistencies. Nothing worked. The cubs would lap at the food half-heartedly, but they never seemed satisfied. They were losing weight. Their silver-blue fur was becoming dull. Their eyes, which should have sparkled with youth and energy, looked tired. Ji-woo barely slept. She stayed in the lab around the clock, monitoring their vital signs, adjusting their environment, trying desperately to figure out what they needed. Her colleague, Dr. Nari, brought her meals and coffee. "You look terrible," Nari said bluntly. She was the ship's medical doctor, a woman who believed in speaking her mind. "I'm fine," Ji-woo replied, staring at her computer screen. The data made no sense. Everything she tried should have worked. "The cubs aren't fine, though," Nari observed. "Their stress hormones are through the roof. It's like they're in constant panic mode." "I know," Ji-woo said miserably, "but I don't know why. I've given them everything they need: food, water, warmth, shelter." Nari watched the cubs for a moment. They were huddled in their containment area, whimpering softly. "Everything except their mother," she said gently. Ji-woo felt her throat tighten. "I can't give them that." "Maybe not," Nari said. "But you can give them the next best thing." "What do you mean?" "Look at how they react when you're near them," Nari pointed out. "They calm down. Their vital signs stabilize. It's only when you're away that they get worse." Ji-woo looked at the cubs. It was true. Whenever she approached the containment field, they perked up. Their eyes brightened. They pressed against the barrier, trying to get closer to her. "You think they've bonded with me?" Ji-woo asked. "I think they've imprinted on you," Nari corrected. "In the absence of their real mother, their instincts latched onto the first caregiver they found. That's you." Ji-woo felt a mix of emotions. Pride, because the cubs trusted her. Fear, because she didn't know if she could be what they needed. And deep worry, because she knew this made everything more complicated. "The captain will be furious," Ji-woo said. "The captain will have to deal with it," Nari replied. "Those cubs need you, not just near them, but with them. Physical contact, constant presence. That's how Valkyrie raise their young, from what little we know." After Nari left, Jiwoo made another decision that would get her in trouble. She opened the containment field and crawled inside with the cubs. They immediately swarmed her, chirping excitedly, licking her hands and face. "Okay, okay," Jiwoo laughed. "I'm here." She settled against the padded wall and let the cubs arrange themselves on and around her. One curled up on her lap. Another draped itself across her shoulders like a living scarf. The other two squeezed in on either side, pressing against her ribs. Within minutes, they were all purring. The sound was so loud it vibrated through Jiwoo's entire body, and for the first time since they'd come aboard, the cubs looked peaceful. Jiwoo stayed there for 6 hours. Her legs went numb. Her back ached, but she didn't move, because the cubs were finally resting, and their vital signs on the monitor above showed steady improvement. When she finally had to get up to use the bathroom, the cubs cried out in distress. Their heart rates spiked. Jiwoo hurried back as quickly as she could, and they immediately calmed down again. "This is going to be a problem," she muttered. But it was a problem she was willing to deal with, because these 4 little lives depended on her, and she wasn't going to let them down. Over the next day, a routine developed. Jiwoo would work at her portable tablet while the cubs slept on and around her. When they woke up, she would play with them, letting them pounce on her hands and chase the light from her laser pointer. She started bringing her meals into the containment area and discovered that the cubs were curious about human food. One of them, the bravest one Jiwoo had started calling Hana in her mind, stole a piece of protein bar from her plate. The cub chewed it carefully, then made a pleased chirping sound. Soon all 4 were begging for bits of her food. "I don't think this is what you're supposed to eat," Jiwoo said, but she shared anyway. Surprisingly, the cubs thrived on it. Mixed with their regular nutrient formula, the human food seemed to give them the extra something they needed. Their energy returned. Their fur regained its shine. They grew stronger and more playful each day. But they remained utterly dependent on Jiwoo's presence. If she left for more than a few minutes, they became distressed. And so Jiwoo stayed with them, sleeping curled up with 4 alien predators like they were nothing more than oversized puppies. On the 3rd night, Jiwoo woke to find all 4 cubs staring at her in the darkness. Their eyes reflected the lab's emergency lighting, glowing like silver coins. "What is it?" she whispered. The cubs didn't answer, of course, but they moved closer, pressing against her even more tightly than usual. Their purring took on a different quality, deeper and more intense. Jiwoo felt something shift in that moment, a connection that went beyond simple caretaking. These cubs trusted her completely. They had given her their survival, their lives, their hearts. And in return, Jiwoo realized she would do anything to protect them. "I won't let anyone hurt you," she promised in the darkness, "no matter what happens." The cubs' purring intensified, as if they understood, and perhaps in their own way, they did. The alarm woke Jiwoo from a restless sleep. Red lights flashed throughout the lab, and the cubs immediately started crying in fear. She gathered them close, trying to calm them while her heart pounded. "All hands to battle stations," Captain Hyun-sik's voice came through the intercom. "We have incoming vessels. Velkari warships. This is not a drill." Jiwoo's blood ran cold. She had known this moment would come, but not so soon. The cubs were still weak, still recovering. They weren't ready to be returned to their people. The ship shuddered as something massive passed nearby. Through the lab's small viewport, Jiwoo could see 3 enormous vessels. They were black as space itself, shaped like predatory birds with wings spread wide. Weapon ports glowed with deadly energy along their hulls. "Dr. Jiwoo, report to the bridge immediately," the captain ordered. Jiwoo looked down at the 4 cubs clinging to her. "I can't leave them," she whispered. But she had no choice. She gently placed the cubs in their containment area, despite their protests, and hurried to the bridge. The command center was chaos. Officers shouted readings and coordinates. The view screen showed the 3 Velkari ships surrounding the Hanul like wolves circling prey. And they were massive, each one easily 10 times the size of the research vessel. "They're demanding we surrender the cubs," Hyun-sik said without turning around. "They gave us 5 minutes before they opened fire." "We're returning them," Ji-woo said quickly. "Tell them we were keeping the cubs safe. We were trying to help." "I did tell them," the captain replied. His voice was tired. "They don't care. They think we kidnapped their young. In Velkari culture, that's a crime punishable by death, not just for you, for all of us." Ji-woo felt sick. "I'll explain. I'll talk to them. They'll understand once." "They're not interested in explanations," Communications Officer Tae-yang interrupted. "They're sending a boarding party. ETA 2 minutes. The captain turned to look at Ji-woo. His expression wasn't angry anymore. It was resigned. "Go back to your lab. Stay with the cubs. When the Velkari board, I'll try to negotiate. But Ji-woo, you need to prepare yourself. They might not let any of us survive this." Ji-woo ran back to the lab, her mind racing. This was her fault. Her decision to save the cubs had doomed the entire crew. 32 people were going to die because she couldn't leave 4 babies to their fate. When she reached the lab, the cubs were in a frenzy. They had somehow broken through the containment field and were scrambling around the room, knocking over equipment and crying out in distress. "It's okay," Ji-woo said, though her voice shook. "Everything's going to be okay." She gathered the cubs to her, and they calmed slightly. But they could sense her fear. Their little bodies trembled as they pressed against her. The ship shuddered again. This time, it was the sound of something attaching to the hull. The boarding party had arrived. Through the lab's security feed, Ji-woo watched as the airlock opened. What stepped through made her breath catch in her throat. The Velkari were terrifying. They stood over 2.5 meters tall, with powerful bodies covered in the same silver-blue fur as the cubs. But where the cubs were soft and small, the adults were all hard muscle and deadly grace. Their claws were longer than Ji-woo's fingers. Their teeth, when they snarled, were like ivory daggers. 6 of them moved through the ship's corridors with weapons drawn. They weren't guns. The Velkari considered projectile weapons beneath them. Instead, they carried curved blades that glowed with some kind of energy field. One swipe from those weapons could cut through steel. Captain Hyun-sik met them in the main corridor with his hands raised. "We mean no harm," he said. "The cubs are safe." "We can explain." The lead Velkari struck him across the face with the back of one massive paw. The captain flew backward and hit the wall hard. He slumped to the ground, unconscious. "No!" Ji-woo screamed, though they couldn't hear her through the security feed. The Velkari warriors moved through the ship, heading straight for her lab. They knew exactly where the cubs were. Of course they did. They could probably smell them. Ji-woo made a decision. She stepped out of the lab into the corridor, putting herself between the approaching warriors and the door. The cubs tried to follow her, but she sealed the lab behind them. They pressed against the transparent door, crying out. The 6 Velkari rounded the corner and stopped when they saw her. This close, they were even more intimidating. Their eyes glowed with an inner light, feral and intelligent at the same time. The lead warrior was female, Ji-woo realized. She had slightly more delicate features, though she was no less dangerous for it. "The cubs are behind me," Ji-woo said, her voice steadier than she felt. "They're healthy. I took care of them." The lead warrior snarled something in the Velkari language. It was all growls and clicking sounds, nothing human vocal cords could replicate. "I don't understand," Ji-woo said. "Please, just let me explain. I found them abandoned on Viridian 7. They were dying. I brought them here to save them." Another warrior stepped forward. This one was male, even larger than the others, with scars crossing his muzzle. He raised his blade, and Jiwoo knew she was about to die. But then the lab door exploded. The cubs had somehow overridden the lock. They burst into the corridor, scrambling over each other in their haste. But they didn't run to the Velkari warriors. Instead, they ran straight to Jiwoo, climbing up her legs and body, crying out. The warriors froze, their weapons lowered slightly. They stared at the scene before them with obvious confusion. Jiwoo knelt down, gathering the cubs close. "It's okay," she told them softly. "These are your people. They're here to take you home." But the cubs didn't want to go. They clung to Jiwoo, burying their faces in her clothes. One of them, Hana, the brave one, turned to face the warriors and hissed. The sound was tiny and not at all threatening, but the meaning was clear. "Stay away from our mother." The lead warrior said something sharp. The scarred male responded, his voice uncertain. They were arguing, Jiwoo realized. The warriors didn't know what to make of this situation. More Velkari entered the corridor. These ones weren't warriors. They wore different clothing, more ornate, with symbols Jiwoo didn't recognize. One of them was older, her fur silvered with age. She carried herself with authority that made even the warriors step aside. The elderly Velkari approached slowly. Her eyes moved from the cubs to Jiwoo and back again. She knelt down, which brought her to roughly Jiwoo's standing height, and said something in a softer tone. "I don't understand your language," Jiwoo said helplessly. "Please, I just want to help." The elderly Velkari reached out one massive paw toward the cubs. Hana hissed again and swatted at her with one tiny paw. The older Velkari's eyes widened. She pulled back and turned to the other adults, speaking rapidly. Whatever she said caused a stir. The warriors looked at each other in disbelief. Some of them lowered their weapons entirely. The scarred male actually took a step backward, his expression almost fearful. The elderly Velkari stood and touched a device on her belt. Suddenly, her words came through in accented but understandable English. "Translation active," she said. "Human, I am called Bo-Ra. I am keeper of our old ways, our histories. What you have done should not be possible." "I just helped them," Jiwoo said. "That's all." "You do not understand," Bo-Ra replied. "Velkari cubs bond only with their blood parents. No other of our kind can care for them. The cubs will accept no substitute. They would rather die than accept a stranger. It is our nature. It is our curse." She paused, looking at the 4 cubs still clinging to Jiwoo. "Yet these children have chosen you, a human, an alien. This breaks all our knowledge." "I don't know why," Jiwoo admitted. "They just needed me, and I couldn't turn away." Bo-Ra was quiet for a long moment. Then she turned to the warriors and spoke in their language. The scarred male protested, his voice rising, but Bo-Ra silenced him with a single gesture. "Your captain," Bo-Ra said to Jiwoo. "He lives?" "I don't know," Jiwoo said. "Your warrior struck him." Bo-Ra made a disapproving sound. She barked an order, and 2 of the warriors hurried away. "He will be healed, and your ship will not be harmed. You have done something extraordinary, human Jiwoo. Whether it is gift or curse, I do not yet know. But you have changed something fundamental. The cubs' parents died in an accident, just as you guessed. We searched for the young ones, but could not find them before you did. By our laws, they should have been left to die. No other could raise them." "That's horrible," Jiwoo said. "It is survival," Bo-Ra corrected. "Or it was, but you have shown us something we did not believe possible. These cubs love you. They have marked you as their heart-bearer, their sole parent. In all our history, this has never happened with an outsider." "What does that mean?" Jiwoo asked. Bo-Ra's expression was unreadable. "It means, human Jiwoo, that nothing will ever be the same." Captain Yun-Sik woke up in the medical bay with a splitting headache, and Dr. Nari hovering over him with a concerned expression. "Easy," Nari said, helping him sit up. You took a pretty hard hit. The Velkari healer helped, but you're still going to be sore for a while. The crew? Yunsik asked immediately. Everyone's fine, Nari assured him. The Velkari aren't attacking anymore. Well, it's complicated. You should probably see for yourself. The captain made his way to the observation deck, where most of the crew had gathered. Through the large windows, he could see the 3 Velkari warships still surrounding the Hanul, but their weapons were no longer charged. Small shuttles moved between the vessels, carrying supplies and personnel. What's happening? Hyun-sik asked Communications Officer Tae-yang. I'm not entirely sure, sir, Tae-yang replied. But the Velkari have been transmitting constantly, not to us, to their homeworld and other colonies. It's like they're spreading news about something important. Where's Jiwoo? In the conference room with their elder, Bo-ra. They've been talking for hours. Hyun-sik found the conference room converted into something between a meeting place and a nursery. The 4 cubs were playing in one corner, pouncing on each other and tumbling across the floor. Jiwoo sat at the table across from Bo-ra, looking exhausted but alert. 2 Velkari warriors stood guard at the door, though they seemed more ceremonial than threatening now. Captain, Jiwoo said when she saw him, I'm glad you're okay. I'm so sorry about all of this. Hyun-sik waved off her apology and sat down. Someone want to explain what's going on? Bo-ra activated her translation device. Your Dr. Jiwoo has accomplished something we believed impossible. She has become a heart-bearer to Velkari young. This changes everything we thought we knew about our species. I still don't really understand what a heart-bearer is, Jiwoo admitted. Bo-ra settled back in her chair, which creaked under her weight. Then I will explain our history, so you may understand the gift you have given us. She paused, gathering her thoughts. My people have always been strong. We are apex predators on every world we inhabit. Our claws can tear metal. Our strength is legendary, but this power came with a terrible price. One of the cubs, Hana, wandered over to Jiwoo and climbed into her lap. The human woman stroked the cub's fur absently as Bo-ra continued. Our young are born with an intense bonding instinct. They must imprint on a parent immediately, or they will die. Not from physical causes, but from something deeper, a breaking of the spirit. In our ancient past, this was not a problem. Communities raised cubs together. Many adults could share the heart-bearer bond. What changed? Hyun-sik asked. War, Bo-ra said simply. Thousands of years ago, our world nearly destroyed itself in conflict. The survivors were traumatized, hardened. Our ability to form heart-bearer bonds shrank. Eventually, only blood parents could bond with their own cubs. No others. We became isolated, unable to trust, unable to share the burden of raising young. That sounds lonely, Jiwoo said softly. It is, Bo-ra agreed. Many cubs die because their parents perish before they are grown. We cannot save them, even when we wish to. The cubs will accept no substitute. They simply fade away, unable to bond with new caretakers. It has made us a dying people. Our numbers shrink with each generation. Jiwoo looked down at Hana, who had fallen asleep in her lap. The other 3 cubs had noticed and were making their way over, wanting the same comfort. But these cubs bonded with me, Jiwoo said. Why? That is the question that has shaken our entire civilization, Bo-ra replied. In the hours since we discovered this, our greatest minds have been debating, and I believe I have found the answer in our oldest texts, scrolls so ancient that most of our people have forgotten them. Bo-ra pulled out a datapad and showed them images of carved stone tablets. The writing was beautiful, but incomprehensible to human eyes. These tablets speak of the heart-bearer gift in its original form. They say it is not about blood or species. It is about something deeper, a quality of the soul. The texts call it sirim, which roughly translates to endless compassion or boundless empathy. In our ancient past, those with strong serum could become heart-bearers to any cub, not just their own. You think I have this serum? Jiwoo asked doubtfully. I think your entire species might, Bo-Ra said. Humans are young in the galaxy. You have not had time to harden, to close yourselves off. You still possess the ability to care for those who are not your own, to take on burdens that bring you no benefit, to choose compassion when survival says to walk away. Hyun-sik felt a chill run down his spine. Are you saying that humans could be heart-bearers to Velkari cubs? Not all humans, perhaps, Bo-Ra said. But some, those with the strongest serum, like your Dr. Jiwoo. She looked at Jiwoo with an expression that might have been hope. Do you understand what this means? For millennia, we have been trapped by our own nature, unable to save our own children. But you, your people, you could help us. You could give us back what we lost. That's a lot to ask, Hyun-sik said carefully. I know, Bo-Ra acknowledged, and I am not asking. Not yet. First, we must understand this better. We must see if this is truly what we believe, or merely a strange accident. But if it is real... She trailed off, her expression distant. If it is real, then humans and Velkari could form a bond unlike anything the galaxy has seen. We could help each other. We could become something greater together. Jiwoo shifted as all 4 cubs arranged themselves on and around her. What happens to these 4? To Hana and her sisters. They are yours, Bo-Ra said. By our laws and traditions, you are their heart-bearer. You are their mother in all ways that matter. We will not separate you unless you wish it. I don't wish it, Jiwoo said quickly. But I don't know how to raise Velkari cubs. I don't know your culture, your traditions. Then we will teach you, Bo-Ra said. And in exchange, perhaps you will teach us what we have forgotten, how to open our hearts again, how to trust. Over the next several days, the Hanul became a strange hybrid of human and Velkari space. Bo-Ra brought teachers and caretakers aboard, not to take the cubs from Jiwoo, but to help her understand their needs. The cubs were growing fast now, their bodies and minds developing at a rate that amazed the human crew. Jiwoo learned the Velkari language, or at least the basics. She learned their songs, the ones mothers sang to cubs at night. She learned about their dietary needs as they grew, their social structures, their coming-of-age ceremonies. But the Velkari learned too. They watched in fascination as other human crew members interacted with the cubs. Security Chief Min-ho, who had been so cautious during the rescue, became Hana's favorite playmate. The cub would ambush him in corridors, pouncing on his boots and wrestling with his legs. He pretended to be defeated every time, and the cub would chirp with victory. Dr. Nari taught the cubs simple games and laughed when they cheated. Engineer Tai Yang showed them how machinery worked, and they listened with rapt attention even though they understood nothing. This is what we lost, Bo-Ra said one evening, watching the cubs play with a group of human crew members. This joy, this easy affection. We became so focused on survival that we forgot how to live. Maybe it's not too late to remember, Jiwoo suggested. Perhaps not, Bo-Ra agreed. Thanks to you. But not everyone was pleased with this development. Messages came from the Velkari homeworld. Some leaders were excited by the possibility of renewed hope for their species. Others were suspicious, even hostile. They saw humans as a threat, not a salvation. They argued that allowing humans to raise Velkari young would dilute their culture, weaken their strength. Change is always frightening, Bo-Ra told Jiwoo, especially to a people who have been the same for so long. But change is also necessary for survival. Those who cannot adapt will perish. This is the law of nature. On the 7th day, something extraordinary happened. One of the Velkari warriors who had been living on the ship approached Jiwoo with a request. His name was Daeho, the scarred male who had nearly killed her during the initial confrontation. "My sister died in the accident that killed the cub's parents," he said through his translator. "She left behind a son, a cub, older than these four. He will not accept any Velkari as heart-bearer. He is fading, but I wonder—" He looked uncomfortable, uncertain. "Would you try? Would you see if your serum can reach him too?" Jiwoo looked at Bora, who nodded encouragingly. "I'll try," Jiwoo said, "but I can't promise anything." "Your willingness to try is more than any of my people could offer," Daeho said. "That alone is a miracle." The cub's name was In-Su, and he was dying. Jiwoo could see it the moment Daeho brought him aboard. In-Su was larger than her four cubs, probably 8 or 9 months old in human terms. But his eyes were dull, his fur patchy and lifeless. He barely moved when Daeho set him down in the lab. "How long has he been like this?" Jiwoo asked, her heart breaking. 3 weeks, Daeho replied. His voice was rough with grief. "Since my sister died, our best healers have tried everything. But without a heart-bearer—" He couldn't finish the sentence. Jiwoo knelt down slowly, making herself small and non-threatening. In-Su didn't even look at her. He just stared at nothing, his breathing shallow. "Hey there," Jiwoo said softly. "I'm Jiwoo. I know you're hurting. I know you miss your mom, but you're not alone. I'm here." In-Su didn't respond. Jiwoo reached out carefully and touched his head. The cub flinched but didn't pull away. She began to stroke his fur the same way she did with her 4 cubs. "It's going to be okay," she whispered. "I promise." Behind her, Hana and her sisters entered the lab. They had been playing with Minho in the corridor, but they always knew when Jiwoo needed them. The 4 cubs approached In-Su cautiously, sniffing him with obvious curiosity. In-Su finally lifted his head. He looked at the 4 females, then at Jiwoo. Something flickered in his eyes, confusion perhaps, or the faintest hint of interest. Hana, brave as always, walked right up to In-Su and headbutted him gently. It was a gesture Jiwoo had learned meant affection and acceptance in Velkari body language. In-Su's eyes widened slightly. "That's right," Jiwoo said encouragingly. "These are my cubs, and if you want, you can be part of our family too." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, so slowly that Jiwoo almost missed it, In-Su leaned forward and touched his nose to hers. It was the briefest contact, but it was enough. Jiwoo felt something shift, like a door opening in her heart. "Welcome home," she whispered. In-Su didn't recover immediately. The damage from weeks of grief and rejection had taken its toll. But with Jiwoo's constant presence and the acceptance of the 4 younger cubs, he began to heal. His eyes brightened, his fur regained its luster, and when he finally started playing with the others, chasing them around the lab and pouncing on their tails, Daeho wept openly. "You gave me back my nephew," he said to Jiwoo. "I have no words for such a gift." "I didn't do anything special," Jiwoo protested. "You cared," Daeho replied simply. "That is the most special thing of all." Word of In-Su's recovery spread like wildfire through the Velkari communication networks. Suddenly, the doubters had no ground to stand on. Here was proof that humans could indeed become heart-bearers to Velkari young. More than that, they could save cubs that even other Velkari could not help. Messages flooded in from across Velkari space. Desperate parents who had lost their mates, orphaned cubs with no one to care for them, entire communities reaching out, hoping for a miracle. "We can't save them all," Captain Hyun-sik said at an emergency crew meeting. "We're a research vessel, not a charity ship, and we have our own mission to think about." "But we can help some," Jiwoo argued. "We have to try." "Dr. Jiwoo is right," Bora said. She had become a permanent fixture on the ship, serving as liaison between the humans and Velkari. But this is bigger than just saving individual cubs. This is about building something new, an alliance between our peoples. What kind of alliance? Hyunsik asked cautiously. Bo-Ra stood and activated a holographic display. Images appeared showing Velkari worlds, human colonies, and the vast spaces between them. The Velkari are strong, Bo-Ra began. We are skilled warriors and builders. Our technology in certain areas exceeds yours, but we are dying out, unable to maintain our population without heart-bearers for our young. She gestured, and the images shifted to show human settlements. Humans are adaptable and compassionate. You spread across the galaxy with remarkable speed. Your capacity for empathy is unmatched. But you are young in cosmic terms. You lack the military strength to protect yourselves from hostile species. You have encountered threats you were unprepared for. You're suggesting a partnership, Hyunsik said slowly. We provide heart-bearers for your cubs. You provide protection and technology. More than that, Bo-Ra corrected. I am suggesting a merger, not of governments or territories, but of peoples. Velkari and humans living together, raising children together, building a future neither species could achieve alone. The crew was silent, absorbing the magnitude of what Bo-Ra proposed. Some of your people won't like this, Dr. Nari pointed out. We've seen the messages. There are Velkari who think humans are inferior. And some humans will think the same of us, Bo-Ra acknowledged. Fear of the other is universal. But fear can be overcome. Trust can be built. You have already shown us how. Look at your crew. Look at how they interact with the cubs. There is no fear there. Only affection. Only family. It would take time, Hyunsik said. Years, probably, to build the kind of trust you're talking about. All good things take time, Bo-Ra replied. But we must start somewhere. And I believe it should start here. With this ship, with your crew and mine. Over the following weeks, an experiment began. More Velkari came aboard the Hanul, not as warriors, but as civilians, families, scientists, teachers. They lived alongside the human crew, sharing meals and workspaces, learning each other's languages and customs. It wasn't always easy. There were misunderstandings, cultural clashes, moments of frustration on both sides. But there were also breakthroughs. Velkari engineers and human technicians collaborated on new designs, combining their knowledge. Velkari warriors taught hand-to-hand combat techniques to interested crew members. Human musicians taught Velkari children songs from Earth. And in the center of it all were Ji-Woo and her growing family. 5 cubs now, ranging in age from the infant sisters to In-Soo, who was becoming a strong young adolescent. They became symbols of what was possible. Proof that different species could not just coexist, but thrive together. One evening, Ji-Woo sat in her favorite spot, a cushioned area in the observation deck where she could watch the stars. All 5 cubs were arranged around her in their usual chaotic pile. In-Soo draped across her shoulders like a heavy scarf. Hana curled in her lap. The other 3 squeezed in wherever they could find space. Captain Hyunsik joined her, bringing 2 cups of coffee. How do you do it? He asked, handing her a cup. 5 cubs, working full-time, helping establish this alliance. Don't you ever get tired? Exhausted, Ji-Woo admitted with a laugh. Every single day. But look at them. She gestured to the sleeping cubs. They're worth it. All of this is worth it. You know there are 30 more cubs coming next week, Hyunsik said. Orphans from various Velkari colonies. They're hoping human crew members will step up to be heart-bearers. I know, Ji-Woo said. Dr. Nari already volunteered for 2. Minho signed up for 1. Even Tae Yang is considering it, though he's nervous. And you? Taking on more? Ji-Woo looked down at her 5 sleeping cubs. These 5 are my limit. I want to give them the attention they deserve, but I'll help train the other volunteers, teach them what I've learned. Hyun-sik nodded. You started something incredible, Ji-woo. When you brought those 4 cubs aboard, you changed the course of history. You know that, right? I just sat down for a minute, Ji-woo said softly. I was tired and needed to rest. The cubs piled onto me like I was their bed. That's all. I didn't plan any of this. The best things in life are rarely planned, Hyun-sik observed. Weeks turned into months. The Hanul became the first mixed-species colony ship, a prototype for what would eventually become dozens of similar ventures. Human volunteers and Velkari families traveled to new worlds together, building communities where both species lived as equals. The political negotiations were complex: trade agreements, defense pacts, cultural exchange programs. But the foundation of it all was simple: trust built through shared experience, human heart-bearers raising Velkari cubs, Velkari warriors protecting human colonies. 2 species learning to see each other not as alien, but as family. Not everyone was happy with the changes. There were protests on both sides. Extremist groups who saw the alliance as a betrayal, but they were outnumbered by those who saw hope, who saw a future where being different didn't mean being enemies. 5 years after that first rescue mission, Ji-woo stood at a podium at the inaugural Interspecies Unity Summit. Her 5 cubs, now grown into young adults, stood with her. Hana had become a diplomat, working to expand the alliance to other species. Insu served in a joint Velkari human military unit. The other 3 had chosen various paths: science, engineering, art. We are here today because of a simple choice, Ji-woo said to the assembled crowd of thousands, both human and Velkari. The choice to care, to help someone in need, even when it's difficult, even when it's scary, even when it goes against what we've always known. She paused, looking out at the sea of faces, some human, some Velkari, all watching her with attention. 5 years ago, I found 4 cubs who were dying. I couldn't walk away. I couldn't leave them. Not because I'm special or brave, but because I'm human. And being human means caring for others, even when they're different from us. Bo-ra, now elderly and frail but still sharp-minded, stood and spoke. And because Dr. Ji-woo made that choice, my people found hope again. She showed us that the serum, the endless compassion we thought we had lost, still exists in the universe. It exists in humanity, and by learning from you, we have begun to rediscover it in ourselves. The summit ended with a treaty, not just between Velkari and humans, but a framework for any species that wanted to join. An alliance built not on military might or economic power, but on mutual care and respect. That night, Ji-woo returned to her quarters on the new mixed-species station orbiting Viridian 7, the planet where it all began. Her 5 cubs, now adults, had their own quarters, their own lives, but they still visited regularly. Hana came to her mother's quarters that evening, bringing tea. You changed everything, Hana said, settling beside Ji-woo on the couch where they had spent so many hours together when Hana was small. I just helped when someone needed it, Ji-woo replied. That's what makes you a heart-bearer, Hana said. Not just to us 5, but to everyone who knows your story. You showed the galaxy that kindness isn't weakness, that compassion isn't foolish, that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is care. Ji-woo smiled and pulled her grown daughter close. You know what I remember most about that first day? What? How I sat down for just 1 minute. I was so tired. And suddenly you 4 were piling on to me like I was your bed, like I was the safest place in the universe. Ji-woo laughed softly. I thought I was saving you. But really you saved me. You gave me purpose. You gave me family. We gave each other family, Hana corrected gently. Outside the window, ships moved between stars, human vessels and Velkari warships flying together. a new age dawning, and it had all started because one woman chose compassion over caution, because she sat down for 1 minute and 4 cubs decided she was home.